Goodness gracious! In this apocalyptic world, I went out with my teammates to stock up on supplies, hoping that we could all level up together. However, that teammate of mine played a treacherous game, trying to hog all the supplies and pushing me to the brink of death. Just when I was almost on my last breath, I was actually saved by a talking dog. This plot is more thrilling than riding a roller coaster. At that time, I was thinking about getting more supplies to take back. Suddenly, footsteps came from behind the shelves. Before I could even turn around, a searing pain shot through the back of my head, as if I had been hit by a sledgehammer. The intense pain made me question my very existence. My body uncontrollably lurched forward, but fortunately, I instinctively performed a Thomas spin and roll, narrowly avoiding the second fatal blow. Gritting my teeth against the excruciating pain, I wiped away the blood and sweat that blurred my vision and struggled to stand firm. When I finally saw the person who had attacked me, a complex mix of emotions welled up inside me. His name was Hu Lin, a lucky one. I had personally rescued from a horde of zombies, and also my teammate for this outing. He actually had the audacity to say with a look of self-righteousness, "Sorry bro, I need the gasoline more than you guys." With that, he threw down the blood-stained military shovel and lunged at me with a knife. I swiftly sidestepped to avoid him and pushed over a shelf, and a pile of sundries came crashing down on him, sending him sprawling. Taking the opportunity, I rolled over, grabbed a rope, and looped it around his neck. With a lock of my legs, the situation was instantly reversed. In the mirror, his purple swollen face and bulging eyes resembled a fish caught in a net, still struggling desperately. Only then did I realize that I was about to kill a living person, and the feeling was completely different from killing a zombie. My heart tightened suddenly. Even though he had tried to kill me just a minute ago, I still hesitated. Hu Lin, sensing a glimmer of hope, summoned all his survival instincts. He exerted all his strength to head, but me from behind, and, when I wasn't looking, grabbed the knife and stabbed wildly backward. The knife pierced my flesh, and the sweet metallic smell of blood immediately filled the air. He even let out a triumphant "ha." But the next second, the triumph on his face was replaced by fear. I drove the shovel hard into his stomach and said coldly, "Didn't anyone ever teach you not to throw your weapons around?" I pulled out the shovel and let his body fall on me. Only when he stopped moving did I push him away and lean against the wall, gasping for breath. The supplies in this mall had already been completely ransacked. There were hardly any food or daily necessities left. I remembered there was an outdoor goods store on the third floor. I had hoped to find some tools there. Fortunately, that sneaky Hu Lin had been dealt with. Otherwise, Yufei and the others guarding the camp definitely wouldn't have been able to handle him. I wryly smiled at my overprotective big brother mentality. That moment of hesitation just now almost got me killed. And yet I still had the leisure to worry about others. The wounds on my thigh and the back of my head were so painful that I was on the verge of collapse. The smell of blood had already attracted the zombie army downstairs. Although zombies are not fast, they are extremely sensitive to the smell of blood, and their infectious power is Kaochang. With my body covered in wounds, I didn't dare to take the risk. I covered the wounds with my hat, roughly bandaged them with a bandage, grabbed a few tools, and headed upstairs. I didn't notice that there was a pair of eyes watching me from the shadows. Before I reached the fourth floor, cold sweat was pouring down my face, and my steps were so unsteady that it felt like I was walking on cotton. I slumped down at the corner, leaning against the wall. My hat was soaked with blood, and the blood trickled down my neck, making me feel unbearably sticky and uncomfortable. I simply couldn't walk any further. Just then, a black and yellow head poked out from behind the half-open door of the emergency exit. It was a mongrel dog. I said feebly, "Are you here to eat me? Well, it's better than turning into a zombie. Just wait a bit, buddy, I'm almost gone." To my astonishment, the dog actually spoke, "Follow me." My mind was so dulled by blood loss that it took me a few seconds to react. How could a dog talk? The mongrel dog seemed to be enjoying my stunned expression. It added, "Would you rather turn into a zombie than believe me?" Strangely enough, I wasn't that shocked. I quickly accepted this absurdity. After all, in this chaotic apocalypse, a dog talking didn't seem like such an earth-shattering feat. The noise from the zombies downstairs was getting louder and louder. I touched the knife at my waist and decided to follow the dog. A short rest, or perhaps the sudden glimmer of hope, gave me a little more strength. I followed the dog into a room that resembled a warehouse and used my last bit of strength to close the stainless steel door. The dog picked up a rag in its mouth and used its paws to stuff it into the crack of the door bit by bit. I looked at my temporary companion with curiosity and couldn't help asking, "Have you evolved?" The dog rolled its eyes at me, dragged a black bag from the pile of awu, and threw it at my feet, saying, "You'd better take care of your wounds instead of gossiping. If you attract all the zombies here, Even I won't be able to save you. I rummaged through the medical supplies in the bag, picked out a syringe, and jabbed it randomly into my body. It was a last-ditch effort. After finally treating the wounds, I rested while remaining vigilant about the movements outside the door. There was only one exit in this warehouse. If we were surrounded by zombies, neither of us would make it out alive. Out of habit, I surveyed this shelter. Against the wall were stacked several boxes of disposable items and semi-processed food. There was a small ventilation vent on the ceiling, and a few rays of light shone on the piles of awoo on the floor. Presumably, the dog had acquired all these from outside. It was now lying comfortably on a small, expensive-looking long-haired carpet. The scene was both eerie and quiet, and somehow, I actually felt quite comfortable and a bit sleepy. However, I still forced myself to stay awake. I rummaged through the pile of rawu. Seeing that the dog didn't react, I picked up a candle to light it. The dog took out a flashlight from under the blanket and said, "Use this." I said, "Shouldn't we save such precious supplies?" The dog didn't say anything, but looked at the box behind me. By the light, I saw the word batteries. Well, it was really well equipped. These days, a dog had more supplies than I did. I was really worse off than a dog. Are you not afraid that I might covet your goods? I smiled and met the dog's gaze. I've been following you for 10 days. The mongrel dog returned to her little den, lying down leisurely, its tail wagging involuntarily. I've watched you being overly kind-hearted, toiling away every day for others' food and clothing, and even saving an ungrateful wretch. I remained silent. Hulin was a person our team had casually rescued a few days ago. Although in this chaotic world, anyone could be the one to stab you in the back. But after deliberation, we still let Hulin join. The first reason was that we couldn't leave someone to die. The second was that he knew some information about resources. However, I naturally didn't let my guard down. Using the excuse that he was new and needed someone to back him up, I always had him stay by my side at all times. This way, even if he turned against us, he would be facing me, the most combat-capable person in the team, rather than my companions who were not proficient in fighting. Looking back now, I can only feel fortunate. Even though I was seriously injured as a result, I was content that he hadn't been able to harm the others. In the more than half a month since the zombie outbreak, the former civilized world had been swept away like a tide, leaving only fragments remaining on the dilapidated streets. The bright night lights and the bustling traffic were now just images in memory. Every time I opened my eyes, I hoped to see the familiar ceiling light in my bedroom, and then show a relieved smile. After several disappointments, I gave up these illusory expectations. Survivors like us still had to keep searching and moving forward for our own survival. Thinking of this, I smiled self-deprecatingly, ignoring the thick mockery in the dog's eyes. It's not easy for everyone to survive. If we can help, we should. I also hope that someone will lend a hand when they meet my relatives. What a saintly father reincarnated. Obviously, it's because I'm highly skilled and fearless. Otherwise, why would you take a fancy to me, right? I forced a casual smile, a bit of a roguish grin. Highly skilled and almost got killed by someone. The mongrel dog lay back on the blanket, looking at me provocatively, daring to take someone along without figuring out who they are. You really have guts. I knew she had seen what had happened just now, looking at my rough and dirty hands. With the thick smell of blood lingering in my nostrils, I clearly realized that killing a person this time was different from before. The emotions in my heart were complex and heavy, but I had no regrets. In a world without order, only those who survived had the right to show mercy. They've been eyeing you for days because you have so much gasoline. The dog mentioned that group of people, her face full of disgust. You're the only ones in this area who haven't been taken over by them yet. How many of them are there? 3, and they're all tough nuts to crack. Thinking of Sun Yufei and the other one, I just wanted to leave as soon as possible. I clenched and unclenched my fists. Considering my current physical condition, I could only sigh. I took out a reused plastic water bottle from my bag, took 2 precious sips, and gestured to the dog. Do you want some? The dog jumped up suddenly, then seemed a bit annoyed at her own eagerness, shook her head, and walked regally to a chewed, open box, picked up a brand new plastic bowl with her mouth, and placed it in front of me, indicating that it was time for me to repay the favor. I couldn't help but smile, and poured a full bowl of water. The dog was very satisfied with my understanding, and lowered her head to drink greedily. Before she could finish, I couldn't resist patting her a couple of times. The dog jumped up as if electrocuted, knocking over the bowl. She looked at the wet ground regretfully, and too proud to lick the ground, she spun around in anger. What are you touching me for? Look at what you've done. Sorry, your head just looks really nice to touch, I said, finding her cute and in the mood to joke. Don't all dogs like to be petted? I didn't know how I could tell that a dog was extremely embarrassed, but at this moment, I was becoming more and more interested in this dog. How can you talk? The dog froze, as if struggling with whether to tell the truth. Sensing the dog's hesitation, I considerately changed the topic. Time is running out. I need to get well, prepared quickly. You're agile and have far-reaching vision. Do you want to consider coming with me? Since the dog could take the initiative to expose her secret to me, there must be her own reasons. Perhaps she also needed a companion like me. I died and woke up possessing this dog's body. The dog suddenly turned back to my previous question, and gave a hasty explanation. I tactfully didn't delve deeper. But a dog is much stronger than a human. Zombies can't catch up with me at all, she said, but her desolate expression betrayed her. I sighed inwardly but said, "That's why I'm asking for your help. Without you, I would definitely be bullied to death by others. Aren't you afraid that I'm also an ungrateful wretch?" The dog stared intently at me. "You're smarter than him," I said firmly. "You didn't overestimate yourself and try to kill me. And without you, I wouldn't have survived until now. Why shouldn't I trust you? You've observed me for so long. You should also understand that cooperation is much better for us than mutual killing." After a brief silence, the dog seemed to have made a decision. "Sort out the things here. Let's leave quickly before it gets dark." With that, she couldn't wait to start packing things. Her proficient manner always gave people a strong sense of disharmony. My heart tightened, and I also squatted down to start picking out things that could be taken. "Do you know there's a courier station nearby?" The dog pulled out the cloth that was blocking the door, sniffed the air outside carefully, and confirmed that there were no zombies outside. Seeing me nod, she said seriously, "Give me your hat. I'll go and lead away the zombies downstairs. We'll meet at the courier station. There are still some cans there. I hope you'll have finished packing by the time I get back. If I haven't come back in half an hour, consider it a gift from me." The dog's words shattered the brief warmth and pulled me back to reality. Yes, outside the door was still a world of struggling for survival. Don't run around for a long time and lead them back again. I tried to make my tone as light as possible, but the dog didn't follow my joke. "This is my token of loyalty. If it succeeds, I hope you can firmly believe in me. I'm not like your previous companion, and I don't expect a knife from my own people." After saying that, her eyes slid over the knife at my waist, and then landed on my face, waiting for an answer. "Okay," I nodded. "What's your name?" "Open the door. A beauty's name isn't so easy to get. If you can reach the courier station, I'll tell you." After the door opened, the dog picked up the hat in its mouth and ran out quickly. Its agile figure disappeared at the stairway. I took a deep breath to calm my mind, closed the warehouse door, and slipped along the wall to the emergency exit, quietly waiting for the right opportunity. After a while, there was a commotion downstairs. The stench of zombies seemed to waft right under my nose. I concentrated and waited, not making any rash moves. As the noisy and crowded sounds downstairs gradually faded away, I knew it was time to go downstairs. The knife in my hand gave me a little sense of security. I couldn't help but worry a bit about the dog. But then I suppressed all my thoughts and seized the chance that another life had torn open for me, carefully making my way downstairs. When I reached the third floor, I glanced at the outdooring pindan in the corner. All the signs indicated that zombies had been there. Hulin really got what he deserved. I was eager to return, but I still moved forward steadily and methodically. I don't know how long it took, but finally, I reached the courier station safely. I closed the door, found the cans in a pile of garbage, and tidied everything up. I hid in a corner behind the door and started waiting for the dog to return. I don't know how long it took. I felt that my legs were about to go numb from squatting. Had something unfortunate happened to her? This thought flashed through my mind quickly, and then I shook my head vigorously. Bad luck. I forced myself to calm down again, and continued to wait in the silent and deserted courier station. Time passed for a very, very long time. I kept imagining various situations in my mind, and finally couldn't hold back. I walked in the direction of the mall. Tisk tisk. Only my faint voice could be heard intermittently in the empty mall. Although it was very impolite to call someone like this, unfortunately, the dog had refused to tell me her name just now. So I had no choice but to call her in the way one calls a dog. I apologized in my heart for my impolite behavior, while continuing to make the tisk sound. "Hey!" Suddenly a female voice came from not far behind me. I instinctively drew my knife and turned around, assuming an attacking stance. And in front of me was the very dog I had been waiting for and looking for so long. I lowered my guard, and let out a long sigh of relief in my heart. Then I hid in a nearby alley again, pointed to my legs, and waved to her to come over. The dog rolled her eyes. "Stop tsk-ing at me. I have a name. It's Shoes On." Then she trotted towards me, her tail wagging very fast. She seemed very happy. I subconsciously touched her head and couldn't help complaining. "Why did it take so long? I thought you were gone for good." I was already very fast. You don't know how many zombies there were. I had to make a lot of detours to come back. I was amused by her tone of a primary school student asking for credit. She realized this later, and sheepishly avoided my hand. "Let's go quickly. I'm starving." I nodded and held the knife in a defensive position at the back. Shoes On understood, and took the lead in vigilantly clearing the way. Unexpectedly, just around the corner, Shoes On suddenly stepped into a drainage cover. She panicked for a moment, and then forced herself to calm down. While trying to pull her leg out, she softly called me. "Come and help me." I walked over quickly, carefully examined the situation, and grabbed the dog's leg, not daring to use all my strength, only pulling gently little by little. It would be better if it came out all at once. This is killing me with pain. Shoes On's dog eyes were watery, and she kicked the ground with her hind legs to exert force together. "Not used to being a dog yet, huh? Stay away from these in the future," I teased while not stopping my actions. "Alright, you're the expert at being a dog. Hurry up." Before Shoes On's leg was completely pulled out, my backpack bumped into a pile of debris by the wall, and some things clattered down from the top. Damn it! Shoes On and I looked at each other. Several zombies seemed to have heard the signal for a meal, and emerged from several directions one after another. Shoes On's breathing became rapid. "This won't do. You go first. There are too many zombies." I acted as if I didn't hear and still tried hard to pull her leg. It was almost out. Shoes On looked at the approaching zombies, pushed me aside, and with a fierce effort pulled out her leg. Enduring the nausea, she lowered her head and licked the blood off randomly. I picked her up and ran wildly. Before I exhausted my strength, I rushed into a restaurant. As soon as I closed the glass door, I didn't even sit down. I leaned against the glass, gasping for breath face to face with the zombies. Hastily tying the door, I moved several tables to block the door. Shoes On poked her head out from the back kitchen. Go through the back door. I smiled. She always had a way, but I didn't set off immediately. Instead, I closed the back kitchen door, squatted down, and bandaged Shoes On's wound. Sorry for my rough skills, I said and even tied a bow. Shoes On actually licked the palm of my hand and said awkwardly, thanks. I smiled and reached out my hand, but before I could touch her head, Shoes On immediately turned around and led the way to the back door. Let's go. Stop being so slow. The rest of the journey had some minor troubles, but relying on Shoes On's dog nose, it was relatively smooth. When we reached the bottom of the building, Shoes On suddenly stopped. I looked at her in confusion. Don't tell anyone that I can talk, and don't make me stay with others. I only trust you, Shoes On said, and after seeing me nod, she let out a sigh of relief. Without waiting for my reply, she walked upstairs as if she knew the way well. I looked at her helplessly, but didn't go upstairs immediately, because I found several faint and unfamiliar footprints. They weren't there when we went out in the morning. After a while, Shoes On returned to my side, her dog face looking ugly. There's someone else's smell, she said. I suppressed the anxiety in my heart and gently comforted her. Yufei and the others are very vigilant. Let's wait and see. Shoes On nodded, and was about to lead the way when I stopped her, and then took the lead in walking upstairs. We quietly sneaked upstairs. The door on the third floor was still closed silently, exuding a faint sense of danger. My brows furrowed, and I exchanged a glance with Shizen, both of us becoming alert. Just then the door suddenly opened. The instant a strange male face appeared before my eyes, I sprang into action. I stretched out my arm and pressed it against his throat, ensuring that he couldn't utter a single sound. I forced him to hide behind the other side of the door. Shizen leaned against the doorframe and sniffed the air inside the room intently. She cast a suspicious look at me, then tiptoed into the room. In less than a few seconds, she came out again and shook her head at me saying, "There's no one." The man I was restraining suddenly struggled violently. He somehow produced a dagger from nowhere and brandished it, stabbing backward at me. I quickly dodged, and he seized the opportunity to turn around. He glanced at me, then at Shizen and sneered, "Ha, a talking dog." The greed and calculation in his eyes were undisguised. This man couldn't be allowed to live, and I made this decision almost instantaneously. He swung the dagger at me before I could react. I narrowly evaded several of his strikes, and took the opportunity to knock the dagger out of his hand. But to my surprise, in the blink of an eye, he had another weapon in his hand, a different dagger. Taking advantage of my momentary shock, he lunged at me. I pressed myself against the wall, and used my arm to block him. Just before the tip of his dagger was about to touch my skin, Shizen suddenly leaped up, and sank her teeth into the man's wrist. The man winced in pain, and waved his arm wildly. In his panic, he stepped on the dagger he had dropped on the ground. Then he fell backward. The railing and the ground 3 floors below were right behind him. Without hesitation, I gave him a push. At the same time, Shizen released her bite, and I caught her firmly in my arms. We didn't look down. Only the sound of the body hitting the ground and bursting open reached our ears. I don't know how much time had passed. A gentle knocking sound came from the door downstairs, and it was the familiar signal. Many thoughts flashed through my mind. After a moment of hesitation, I walked to the door downstairs. After waiting for a while, the door opened. I didn't enter immediately. Sun Yufei shook his head to indicate that it was safe and beckoned me in. When he saw the dog behind me, a look of surprise crossed his face, but he didn't ask any questions and gently closed the door. The windows in the house were all open, and there was no sign of life in the room. It was obvious that they had come here in a hurry. This place isn't safe anymore. We're leaving soon, Sun Yufei and I said simultaneously. There was a serious expression on Sun Yufei's face. He noticed the wound on my body, and was so angry that he almost jumped up. That bastard Hulin. I patted Yufei's shoulder, and sat down on the nearby sofa to rest. I allowed him to come in. There's no point in talking about it now. What happened while I was away? That man who just fell down was probably one of Hulin's men. Where's Hilu? There are no windows in the utility room. She's making some things in there to take with us on the road. As Yufei spoke, he took out 2 backpacks from the room. There were 3 people acting suspiciously downstairs today. We were afraid something would happen, so we quickly moved downstairs. As soon as we came in, they went upstairs. Not long after they went up, we heard them rummaging around on the 3rd floor. We thought they would leave after searching, but we didn't expect them to leave one behind. Sun Yufei wiped the sweat from his forehead and sat down with a heavy heart. His hands were intertwined, and his thin legs were trembling involuntarily. It was clear that he was a bit scared. At this moment, Hilu came out of the room. In the messy environment, she seemed to emit a warm and gentle light, illuminating the dusk. She was holding an iron soup bowl in her hand, and there were some hard-boiled eggs inside. She was surprised when she saw Shizen but didn't say anything. She quickly distributed the food to everyone, then cracked her own egg, and tried to feed it to Shizen. This gesture must have pleased Shizen very much, as her tail was almost wagging off. Sun Yufei's hands were shaking so much that he couldn't peel the egg. Suddenly he burst into tears. I can't imagine what would happen if Lulu fell into their hands. A soft, dusty hand landed on his shoulder. It was Hilu. She smiled gently. Brother Duo took Hulin out, because he was afraid I would be in danger, and asked you to stay with me. Why do you have so little confidence in yourself? You reacted so quickly today. Didn't you protect me? She poured some water and handed it to Sun Yufei, then took the egg from his hand and started peeling it. Besides, what time is it now? You're underestimating me too much. Shizun signaled to me with her eyes that she understood why I had brought the two of them along. Sun Yufei blushed at her words and mumbled, not knowing what to say. He just wiped away his tears, took the egg, and began to eat it voraciously. Yilu turned around, took out a cold potato from her bag, and skillfully peeled it. Brother duo, there's a honeycomb briquette in this house. I cooked all the things that were inconvenient to carry. I looked at Yilu's composed appearance and sighed. It was an accident that we met them. Sun Yufei was a technical backbone in his department. He had a somewhat withdrawn personality, but he wasn't a bad person. When I went to the supermarket on the off chance, he and his girlfriend were trapped in the mall. Even though he was exhausted, he still tried his best to protect the people around him. Yilu stood back to back with him, holding a fruit knife, without the slightest hesitation or timidity. I knew it was worth helping them. Brother duo, almost everything is here. When are we leaving? Sun Yufei looked at me, waiting for a decision. We won't leave for now. It's too dangerous outside at night. Now that Hulin is gone, they don't dare to come tonight. We won't turn on the lights tonight. Let's rest for one night. I'm a bit injured, and I can't hold up if we leave immediately. What do you think? Sun Yufei and Yilu nodded without speaking. They both guessed what had happened, but there was no better solution now. Going out at night in our current state was like offering ourselves to the zombies. This is our new partner, Zanzan. Sometimes, a dog is more reliable than a person, I said as I stroked Shizun's head. If it weren't for Zanzan today, I wouldn't have made it back. Shizun couldn't express her thoughts now. She lay on the ground listlessly, looking aggrieved and cute. Yilu couldn't resist, and came over to stroke her. She whispered softly, thank you. Sure enough, the charm of a young lady was great. Shizun closed her eyes comfortably, as she was being stroked. Yilu looked at her docile appearance and whispered secretly, promise sister not to bark, okay? Otherwise, if we're discovered by the bad guys, we won't be able to feed you delicious food. Shizun had no choice but to gently rub her head against Yilu's trouser leg to indicate that she understood, as she couldn't speak. I watched their interaction. Seeing Shizun bringing trouble on herself, I held back my laughter so much that my wound twitched with pain. I couldn't help but let out a hiss. Sun Yufei saw that my head was only haphazardly wrapped with some cloth. He rummaged through the backpack, found the medicine and gauze, and started rebandaging me while worrying about the shortage of supplies. I knew what he was thinking just by looking at him. I also knew that hiding and running like this wasn't a solution. But after so many days, we didn't dare to contact other people. One of the reasons we brought Hulin along was that he knew about the shelter. I had always believed in the power of the country. Half a month was enough for them to react, and they would definitely send a message to the survivors to inform them of the direction of the shelter. I had a hunch that the shelter would be the end of all these sufferings. But after so many days, there was neither an alarm sound nor a broadcast. I've been trying to find a radio these days to see if there's any way to get news about the shelter, I said in a steady voice, trying not to spread the panic in my heart to everyone. We can also look for a car. We can receive the broadcast on a car too. Sun Yufei's tone was a bit excited, but then he became dejected. Presumably, he remembered that we had searched the nearby cars some time ago. Those cars were all damaged to varying degrees, and we couldn't find the keys either. We didn't know the technique of hot wiring the car to start it. We did obtain a lot of gasoline, but today it should have been given to those guys. I didn't dampen his spirit. I smiled and said, Yufei is right. We also need to find a car. Otherwise, even if we get the news, we won't be able to move. Sun Yufei smiled shyly, his eyes full of trust in me. After I finished speaking, I pretended to casually glance at Shizun. Shizun immediately understood what I meant. She got up reluctantly, bit my trouser leg and tugged at it. I smiled at Sun Yufei and Yilu. You guys go to bed early. We'll set off as soon as it's dawn tomorrow. Zanzan probably needs to go to the toilet. I'll take her to the balcony. Shizun froze. She stared at me with wide eyes as I talked nonsense with a serious expression, and she even forgot to be angry and ashamed. Watching me get up and walk towards the balcony, she followed reluctantly. When we got to the balcony, she didn't say anything. She squatted down beside me with a look on her face that said she was sulking. I surveyed the surrounding situation, thinking about how to undo Sun Yufei and Yilu tomorrow. Seeing that I didn't speak for a long time, Shizun became even angrier. Unexpectedly, after holding it in for a long time, she actually let out a fart. In the silent night, the puff sound couldn't be hidden. Both Shizun and I heard it, but we both pretended not to. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I held back my laughter and said, Is this what you call a fart plop? After that, I watched as Shizun lay on the ground, feigning death with a look of despair. I laughed silently. After laughing, I gently pushed Shizun with my hand, and found that she still didn't respond. I picked her up, and Shizun struggled, flailing her forepaws in the air. Just let me die. Okay. I fart too sometimes. I don't have any more gas now. I'll show you next time. We'll be even. Shizun didn't listen, and continued to thrash around. Don't move. It seems there's someone. She was so scared that she froze. She didn't move at all. Seeing that she was okay, I leaned against the balcony and sat down. I was just kidding. You damned liar. Shizun lay on the ground and bared her teeth at me. Unfortunately, she wasn't big enough, and her expression wasn't fierce enough. At most she could be considered cute and fierce. It was obvious that she was still a young dog. I stroked her head with my hand. Do you know where there's a car? Yeah, I have a car in a nearby community. I hid the key. You're so far-sighted. I was quite good at giving compliments. Not only do you have a good eye for choosing partners, but you're also very organized. I'm so lucky to have you as a partner. Shizun was so flattered that she closed her eyes happily. Shall we set off together tomorrow? Let's settle them down nearby. With too many people, the target is too big, and it's inconvenient to move. I don't know where those 3 people are exactly. If we confront them head-on tomorrow, I'm not very confident. I felt my injured leg. I didn't know if that injection had taken effect. I estimated that it would recover about 70 to 80% in a few more days. What was the situation in the community when you went back last time? I didn't go to bed right away. I was thinking about tomorrow's plan. There weren't too many zombies. Although things happened rather suddenly, that community is quite upscale. The population density is low, and many people drove away when they saw something was wrong. When I went back later, I didn't find any survivors. Each villa has a separate garage. I saw that the car was okay, so I found the key and hid it. It's a good place to stay as a foothold. After we get the car, we can rest there with the supplies for a few days, and plan the route before setting off. Was that your plan all along? There was a hint of admiration in my eyes. If I could drive myself, what would I need you for? Shizun frowned and looked at her fluffy limbs. An image of Shizun waving her short legs to drive immediately appeared in my mind. I couldn't help but laugh. Sorry, I'm always confused by your meticulous thinking and forget that you're a dog now. Having spoken, I gently stroked the dog's head. Shizun snorted at me and said, I'll keep watch tonight. You go to sleep right away. I was accustomed to her tough-talking yet tender-hearted manner. And I wasn't being polite either, considering there would be plenty of tasks requiring my effort tomorrow. Alright, you keep watch for 5 hours. When it's time, wake Sun Yufei to take over. We have a long journey ahead of us tomorrow. Don't push yourself too hard. She fell uncharacteristically silent and lay in the living room, watching me carefully check the doors and windows. The owner of this house must have lived a good life. The decoration was warm and had some tasteful little touches, but I wondered where they were struggling to survive now. Without the law and civilization, in such extreme circumstances, to stay alive, the animalistic side of humans awakens, cruel and instinctive. I thought again about the moment I slit Hu Lin's throat, such brutality. The knife fell, and blood spurted. But Shizun still brought me back to the warehouse. In that confined space, she revealed her supplies. Her words were somewhat provocative, and she exposed my crime. If I had wanted to take action, there were so many opportunities. But I didn't. I was still a human being, a person willing to face my own ugliness. Back in the room, I couldn't fall asleep. Outside the door, there were Shizun's intermittent footsteps as she paced around the house. I pushed open the door and saw her lying on the ground, looking at a group photo found in a backpack. I had seen that photo before. In the photo, Sun Yufei, with a serious expression, was much handsomer than he was now. He was wearing a bachelor's gown, standing on the grass. Under the bright sunlight, the youthful spirit in him could not be hidden. And beside him, Hilu was smiling gently. Her water blue dress was romantic and carefree, and her slender white hand was affectionately linked with Sun Yufei's. They were so well matched. That year, I had just graduated from university. Sun Yufei also got up earlier. His glasses couldn't hide the 2 thick dark circles under his eyes. Seeing the photo in front of Shizun, the words slipped out of his mouth involuntarily. Can you believe it? Lulu was actually my senior. Recalling the sweet times of the past, Sun Yufei didn't notice that the corners of his mouth had turned up. He casually sat beside Shizun, picked up the photo, and caressed the image of Hilu in the photo affectionately. The arrogant him in the photo seemed very strange now. After graduating with his excellent skills, he had a smooth career and earned a lot of money. But he also faced a lot of paiji. If it weren't for my occasional help, he might have already quit the job he actually liked a long time ago. Being with Lulu, I actually tried to change a lot, but it still wasn't enough. Sun Yufei sighed and stroked Shizun's head. If I were stronger, everyone wouldn't have to be so tired, and brother duo wouldn't always have to rush into danger. Looking at Sun Yufei's self-blaming appearance, I felt bad too. But at this time, just staying alive was already a struggle. Who had the time to feel sorry for themselves? Just as I was about to open my mouth to comfort him, unexpectedly, a voice suddenly cut me off. The biggest help you can give is to stop being so self-deprecating. Shizun apparently couldn't hold it in anymore, and actually spoke up. Sun Yufei looked at her in surprise, and then looked around, only to confirm that the words had indeed come from Shizun. I couldn't help but secretly laugh. He was as inexperienced as I was when I first heard Shizun speak. Why can you talk? Sun Yufei trembled in fear. Does it matter? Otherwise, why do you think Zhang Duo is willing to take me along? Shizun raised her chin proudly. I didn't want to speak before because I was afraid you would make a fuss. Sun Yufei still looked at Shizun in astonishment, and then he looked at me with the same surprised expression. Seeing me nod with a smile, he calmed down a bit. He turned to continue talking to Shizun. So what do you think I should do? People who often ask what to do are those who don't understand themselves. More than asking what to do, you should think about why you've become like this, Shizun said seriously and firmly. Sun Yufei couldn't help but frown. It seemed he had taken her words to heart. Since the day the zombies broke out, Sun Yufei had always felt flustered. Perhaps it was because all his confidence had come from his past success in work and research. In this era without the internet, where survival skills were needed, his thin build, sensitive emotions, and poor social skills had all become fatal flaws. He was like a wild beast that had lost its fangs, constantly in a state of anxiety all day long, always defining himself as a burden to the team. Zhang Duo has never disliked you, let alone He Lu. You've lost your sense of self-worth. Only you can help yourself stand up. Hurry up and cheer up. Every minute is precious. Shizhen stopped at that. She pulled out a luxurious small carpet, left Sun Yufei to think alone, and went to rest on her own. I never thought this little mongrel was also a master of thought. I patted Sun Yufei on the shoulder, and then silently closed the door, and went back to sleep. The night passed peacefully. Sun Yufei woke everyone up, and we had a hasty breakfast in the morning light. After assigning tasks, we each carried our backpacks. Even Shizhen was carrying a small bag in her mouth. After I sent Shizhen ahead to scout, we all moved to a nearby building. Before setting off, I repeatedly warned, nothing is more important than people. If there are still people coming, don't even think about it. Leave things to deceive them and run away immediately. Sun Yufei and He Lu solemnly agreed. Just as Shizhen was about to leave, Sun Yufei stopped her. He squatted down, awkwardly hugged Shizen's neck, and whispered in a voice like a mosquito, "Thanks, Zanzan." Shizen didn't say anything. She rubbed against him, and then set off with me. 3. Hungming Villa area wasn't far, but my leg hadn't fully healed. To avoid the zombies that emerged from time to time, it took nearly 2 hours to reach the security booth at the entrance. Shizen's worried look was too obvious. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and stroked her with a smile. It's okay. It didn't hit any important blood vessels. Other than a bit of weakness, there's nothing serious. Shizen glanced at my faintly blood-stained bandage and tugged at my backpack. Change it. We don't want to attract zombies. I'm also a bit hungry. I understood Shizen's awkward thoughtfulness and obediently explored the security booth. After making sure it was safe, I took out 2 cans, opened one for Shizen, and placed it in front of her before starting my own lunch. After eating for a while, Shizen suddenly said, "Don't fall in love with me. The relationship between a human and a dog is too taboo. I won't allow it." I was choked. I suppressed a cough, took 2 sips of water, and then looked at her helplessly. "What are you thinking about with that little head every day?" Shizen found a comfortable position to lie down, and looked at me with her wet eyes. "You're too good to me. I'm scared." I looked at her for a while and carefully said, "Maybe it's because I feel comfortable being with you." I played with the water bottle in my hand. At first, I always acted alone. I never slept soundly. After having them as companions, it got much better. But Yufei doesn't have strong survival skills. Without his technical advantage, he lives in anxiety every day. Other than helping him build up his confidence, I really can't do much. He Lu is very strong and smart, but she doesn't have good physical strength. In this situation, if she were really left alone, I don't dare to imagine. You're amazing. If I were in your situation, I couldn't have done better. Everyone thinks I'm their sense of security, but Shizen, I also have a lot of times when I'm tired and at a loss. I can't take care of everything. When Hu Lin died, I felt that this absurd world was so helpless. The price of staying alive was too heavy. I almost gave up struggling. Then you appeared. There was an indescribable emotion in my heart. Like a savior. As long as I'm willing to give my trust, I can be redeemed. I reached out and held Shizen in my arms. Everything now proves that I didn't trust the wrong person. Zanzan, you're my comrade in arms, someone worthy of having my back. With you by my side, I feel very safe. She didn't resist this warm embrace. This isn't actually my home. It's my fiancé's home. Shizen began to open up. Under the high sun, with the unfinished can, the zombies that could appear at any time, in the cramped security booth, with a disheveled man holding a dog, it was a dangerous and desolate scene. Not a good time for sentimentality. I gave up my dream of being an artist, came to this city, and became a leisurely art teacher. I was busy with the wedding that was going to be held in 3 months. Shizen's tone was cold and calm. He was like a child, not wanting to take care of anything. His parents indulged him in everything. All the difficult tasks fell on me. I don't understand why I was so willing. Maybe this is love, I said, my brows unconsciously furrowing, while my stroking motion became subconsciously gentle. Yeah, perhaps I was also immersed in this false sense of being needed, until he opened the door, and saw his parents who had turned into zombies. Guess what his first reaction was? Shizen didn't give me a chance to answer. He pulled me over and used me to block his parents out of the door, and then he closed the door firmly. So decisive. The air was hot and stagnant. The chests of both the man and the dog felt suffocated. I never expected that I would come back to life, Shizen said, not realizing that she was already in tears. I came back and saw him cowering in a room filled with food, not even having the courage to go out. His cowardly appearance made me sick. What made me even more disgusted was seeing myself wandering outside the door as a zombie. I didn't say anything, and just hugged the trembling Shizen tightly. I think my resurrection from being a dog was an opportunity, given by heaven to let me settle the karma. I just moved a stool and opened a few doors, she said, closing her eyes tightly. With my gentle strokes, she calmed down her emotions, quickly finished the can, and motioned for me to set off as soon as possible. She was once again the fearless Shizen, fully armored. I sighed, quickly composed myself, packed up my things, and set off with Shizen. But my brows never relaxed again. The journey was relatively smooth. We only jointly dealt with 3 wandering zombies before arriving at the villa together. When I sat in the car, I still couldn't believe it. Everything was so frighteningly smooth, always making people feel that there was still something bad yet to happen. Presumably Shizen felt the same way. Her expression was also very serious, as she squatted in the passenger seat. I didn't see him, or his parents, and I didn't see myself either. Could it be? Her words were left unfinished, but I already understood what she meant. She was afraid that someone had been here. For some reason, my heart suddenly felt empty, followed by a senseless panic. I let out a long breath and focused more on driving. No matter what, as long as I went back to see Sun Yufei and He Lu, confirmed that they were okay, and stayed with them, then nothing would be a problem. I drove the car out of the villa area. At the same time, a white car passed by us. The car was driving very fast, as if the owner had something urgent to do. Seeing me glance at the car, Shizen also quickly stood up and stared at it for a while. After the car was out of sight, Shizen muttered, "Could it be a resident I saw before?" I wasn't in the mood to respond. I just stepped on the accelerator more forcefully, driving forward on the straight road ahead. The zombies we encountered occasionally were easily left behind. The entrance of the community was in sight. I felt relieved and secretly sighed that we were finally back. Just then, Shizen suddenly shouted loudly, "Go back! It's Hu Lin's gang!" Almost at the same time as Shizen spoke, I made a sharp turn, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The car seemed to be flying. Hitting the zombies didn't stop the speed of my anxious heart. The gray-green, turbid mucus smeared on the windshield, adding a stinking color to the world. The villa with the white car parked in front of it was so conspicuous at this moment. Shizen and I got out of the car and rushed forward. Before we even went upstairs, we heard a scream, a man's voice. We looked at each other. Shizen only said one sentence, "There's He Lu's scent." Then she ran upstairs. Outside the door of the second floor room, there was a man still struggling. His body was covered with bite marks. Shizen, with red eyes, was biting his throat, and blood was flowing all over the ground. I rushed into the second floor room, and saw He Lu with torn clothes. The cuts on her body were unbearable to look at. The man beating her had his back to us. He covered his bleeding neck with one hand, cursing "bitch," and slapping He Lu crazily with the other. His body was covered with desperate scratch marks. I rushed forward, grabbed the man, and threw him against the wall. Before he could react, I pinned him down and punched him again and again, like a rainstorm, on his ugly face. Shizen bit the man's right arm as soon as I started. Her eyes were wild as she tore at him. We were both venting our anger. Why didn't we recognize these beasts earlier? The man tried to struggle at first, but soon he was beaten into a bloody mess and died silently. Watching the head beneath me swaying unconsciously, my rationality finally returned. I dropped him and embraced the still frenzied Shizen, gesturing for her to look at He Lu. Shizen's face was covered in blood. Seeing the dying He Lu on the ground, she instinctively whined and ran over to gently lick the wounds on He Lu's face. He Lu's once pure, as dewdrop cheeks were swollen high, and there was a knife wound that extended to her chin. The former radiance in her eyes had long been taken away, and her eyes were almost closing. She caught sight of Shizen in her hazy vision. Fei Lida lifted her hand to grasp Shizen's leg, as if she still had something to say. I quickly squatted down, gently lifted He Lu's head, and placed it on my lap. Just as I was taking off my coat to cover her body, I noticed a gush of blood welling up from her abdomen. Shizen saw it too and looked at me pleadingly, but I was powerless. Tears welled up continuously, and my cheeks twitched involuntarily. "It's okay. I'm still clean." He Lu managed a faint smile. I took down one of them. "You're amazing." My voice was extremely hoarse. "I didn't expect them. Don't blame yourself." In her dying moments, she summoned her last bit of spirit. "It's the end of the world. Even if it wasn't Hu Lin, there would be others. They're no longer human. They'll do anything to survive. It's even harder for women to survive." He Lu exerted too much effort and coughed up a lot of blood. They lured the zombies over. Yufei was so brave, cough cough. He took care of the person who slipped in and blocked the door with his body. In He Lu's mind, the frail young man appeared again. He was her man. His body was covered in blood, yet he was still shouting for her to run, saying it was okay, and they would meet soon. "Burn it, make it clean. Take both of us." He Lu's voice was so faint that it was almost inaudible. I nodded continuously, and tears fell from my cheeks onto her blood-stained body. Along with the gushing blood, He Lu closed her eyes with a smile. She was still as beautiful as the first time I saw her. Shizen's tears also fell, wetting a corner of He Lu's clothes. But there was no time for us to continue wallowing in grief. I stood up, stroked Shizen's head, and almost gritted my teeth as I said, "Let's go find Sun Yufei." On the way back to the community by car, neither of us spoke. My hands were shaking incessantly, and I was praying desperately in my heart. I hoped more than anyone that Sun Yufei was okay. Yet I also knew more than anyone that my prayers were just in vain. When we drove near the camp, we found that there were almost 20 zombies here. Almost all the ones that hadn't been cleared by us in this area were here. We could roughly guess what method those people had used to open the camp gate. The smell of blood from the car attracted the zombies to gather around. And in the middle of the zombie horde, I finally saw the figure that made me completely break down. Sun Yufei, covered in blood, was walking towards our car with stiff and unconscious steps. I couldn't control myself and let out a loud howl. The veins on my forehead almost burst out. My 10 fingers tightly grasped my hair, and I slammed my head hard against the steering wheel. The car immediately made a sound, as if responding to my pain. I was like a believer whose faith had crumbled, not knowing who to turn to for help, only able to let out a final wail. Shizen understood my helplessness and suddenly shouted, "Zhang Duo!" A bit of my rationality returned. "We have to take Sun Yufei out. We can't leave him here." Shizen looked at me seriously. My eyes were so red that they seemed to be oozing blood, and my teeth were chattering. I looked back at He Lu, and a fierce determination welled up in me. "Do you want us to stay here with them too? Think about what you promised He Lu." Shizen's tone was icy cold and finally pulled me back to my senses. I took a few deep breaths, regained control of my body, and started the car with trembling hands. What should we do? First, knock some of them down, find Sun Yufei, tie him up, and I'll lead the others away. Shizen watched as the car broke through the encirclement of the zombies. Fortunately, Sun Yufei was among the group of zombies that followed us, and some of the zombies gave up on us. A pile of rotten red in the distance at the bottom of the building seemed to attract them more. Soon, they gathered around and started gnawing again. We didn't want to think deeply about what it was. Finally, we found a suitable location. It took me a long time to rummage through the bag and find the rope. My hands were shaking as I thought of Hu Lin. Shizen didn't give me a chance to reminisce and stated the next plan. After you tie up Sun Yufei, deal with him as soon as possible. I'll eat the zombies and run west. Let's meet at the courier point again. Okay. I closed my eyes and took a moment to calm down, then uttered a yes. We only have one chance. Don't get hurt. The sun was hanging obliquely in the sky, seemingly gradually withdrawing its power, reminding us that night was approaching. Shizen didn't hesitate. She quickly got out of the car and jumped back. The zombies all turned their heads. She used her agility and speed to lead the zombie horde around, constantly playing hide and seek with danger, not allowing herself to be distracted for a moment. I had a direct sense of her calmness for the first time. I took a deep breath and locked my eyes on Sun Yufei. Now, I got out of the car, circled around, and made a flying leap at the target, locking Sun Yufei's neck and dragging him backward non-stop. After turning into a zombie, Sun Yufei had the crazy and unrestrained strength. It took me some time to barely subdue him. At the same time, I was surrounded by zombies, and I had to rely on Sun Yufei to resist them. Suddenly, all the zombies seemed to receive a common command, and gave up on me all at once, surging towards Shizen. Even Sun Yufei instinctively moved forward. I watched as Shizen bit off her own tail, ran forward with blood flowing, and led the zombies away in the setting sun. I felt that the pain in my heart gave me a lot of strength. I closed my eyes and didn't hesitate any longer. I stabbed the sharp knife quickly and steadily into Sun Yufei's head. Rest in peace, Yufei. The lovers in the back seat finally met, their heads touching each other, intimate and inseparable. I drove numbly, feeling my emotions gradually leaving me. The whole world seemed to be getting farther and nearer. The news of the shelter in City A came from the radio, over and over again. I didn't know whether it was to encourage myself or to play it for them. So the shelter was so close. The courier point arrived, and there was still no sign of Shizen. I turned off the car and waited quietly. I knew I could wait for her, just like last time. Last time, when I set off to explore the mall, I saw a small black blurry head in the reflection of the glass of a roadside store, looking at me from afar. This scheming little one. All my worries were in vain. She was very smart and capable. I was sure I could wait for her this time too. Time never stops for anyone. Darkness gradually spread over the car windows. The car was filled with the smell of blood, but I felt at peace. Far away, a black shadow emerged from the corner, full of strength and hope, running towards me. I waited for you. Shizen lay on the seat, gasping for breath. The bandage was gone, and her body was covered in dirt, so dirty that it was hard to touch. Still, no one spoke, but there was a reassuring power in the air. I didn't hesitate and immediately set off. The dangerous night, and everything in the car made me not dare to risk going back to the camp. After thinking for a moment, I drove towards the villa area. Shizen seemed extremely tired and lay on the car seat drowsy. There was news of the shelter, but they were gone. Back at the villa, I reinforced the doors and windows, carried He-Lu and Sun Yufei to the bathroom, carefully wiped their faces clean, put clean clothes on them, and placed them on the big bed in the guest room, letting the moonlight gently cover them. They could finally stay together quietly and never be afraid again. Shizen watched me silently as I busied myself without feeling hungry or thirsty. She understood this kind of busyness to escape reality. Even she, a bystander who had only been with us for a short time, was on the verge of emotional collapse, let alone me, who had gone through hardships with them. Help me take a bath, Shizen said in a not very loud voice, pulling me back to reality. Only then did I notice Shizen's long bay appearance. I picked up Shizen without a word, and went to the bathroom. There were several buckets of purified water beside the bathtub. Now these were luxurious bath waters. I didn't soak Shizen in the water, but wet a towel and carefully scrubbed her. Beneath Shizen's fur were fine and dense wounds, some new and some old, honestly recording the cruelty of this city. Fortunately, there were no bite marks. The water in the basin gradually turned thick and yellow. Finally, I reached the tail. My hand subconsciously trembled. Dirt and blood clots spread from the wound to the root. The broken tail was like a snake that had just emerged from the mud. Shizen's breathing even became quieter and quieter. What's the use of me? What's the use of me? I asked in a muffled voice, clutching my chest. I lost the strength to stand and collapsed to the ground like a deflated balloon. Shizen silently got into my arms, accompanying me as I opened the floodgates of my emotions. I cried chaotically, with tears and snot all over my face. I was as fragile as burned paper, ready to crumble at a touch. But Shizen was still in my arms, a warm mass, making me hold her tighter and tighter, wanting to draw some strength to keep going from her. I was afraid of losing again. The life in my arms was the last bit of vitality in my life. If I continued to sink, was I going to end her life in this villa again? But even for a minute, I wanted to do nothing for a moment. Can you protect everyone? Shizen poked her head out from her arms and asked me gently. In fact, I also understood in my heart that this was the survival rule of this era. If I wanted to go far and have an easier time, I needed to let go of the responsibilities that I shouldn't have carried. Things had come to this. Wasting time blaming myself would only reduce the survival rate of the living. Most of the pent-up anger dissipated with the tears, and I felt the exhaustion of my body overwhelming me. I wiped my face and continued to treat Shizen's suppurating wound. After bandaging the wound, I noticed that Shizen was burning abnormally. I quickly found the last bit of anti-inflammatory medicine and fed it to her. Perhaps my sad expression was too obvious, and Shizen still had to comfort me weakly. Dogs are much tougher than humans. Don't worry. I nodded, my throat choked so that I couldn't speak. I could only discuss setting off for the shelter tomorrow. After eating dinner carefully, I lit a fire for Sun Yufei, and he Lu on the rooftop platform. When the flames rose, they were beautiful, swirling up into the sky with a kind of power, free, clean, and unrestrained. 2 vibrant lives were finally contained in just one box in the end, but I would carry them and keep going. Shizen and I snuggled up on the soft bed, spending the last night in this city together. As soon as the sky turned a faint fish belly white, I had already packed up. Shizen was still asleep, or rather in a stupor. When I shook her awake, she was still a bit dazed, and her body was frighteningly hot. I held her tightly, as if a moth to the flame, trying to retain her last bit of warmth. I pursed my lips and continued with what I had to do. It was just getting light when we set off. City A wasn't far. If everything went smoothly, we might arrive by night. I used to love mountain climbing. I would go every week. Everyone said I was a man of the mountains, I said as I drove, talking about the past as if the recent detour, due to blockages, hadn't affected me at all. Shizen tried her best to perk up and liven the atmosphere. Really? I like going to the beach. Wouldn't that make me the daughter of the sea? However, now the only swimming skill I have is dog paddling. Then let's live by the sea in the future. But you have to often accompany me to climb mountains. I casually arranged a nebulous future. Who wants a future with you? Shizen smiled weakly. I'm still very dedicated to my work. I probably won't have much time to walk you. At that time, I'll buy a high-tech door to make it convenient for you to go out and play on your own, and also to bring me food. I shook off a small group of zombies, made a detour, and drove onto a small path. Are you planning to turn me into a Tenlogunang? Shizen was so angry that she became more alert, looking at me with a resentful expression. You take care of the home, and I take care of the outside. The division of labor is so clear. Can't expect you to go out and perform tricks to earn money, can we? I forced a smile and estimated the remaining distance in my heart. Even though the road was bumpy, I didn't dare to slow down the speed. I just longed faster, even faster. Shizen didn't speak. She should have sensed that she might not be able to hold on until we reached the shelter, nor wait for the future I talked about. She raised her head and looked at the trees outside the window, which were rapidly receding. The sunlight was clearly good, but it barely fell on her. The car was still running on the path of hope. As it swayed, Shizen began to gasp. I slowly stopped the car and looked at Shizen. Shizen didn't avoid my gaze. I probably won't be able to bring you food. I turned my head away, childishly trying to escape. We're almost there. Once we get there, everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. It's so annoying. They kept chasing me. I even wrapped my wound with dirt, but they still found me, Shizen said calmly, as if telling someone else's story. Fortunately, I wasn't bitten, but there are just too many wounds. It's all their fault. I gently picked up Shizen, as if comforting a child who had lost a fight. Finally, I don't have to run anymore, Shizen sighed softly. We've come through so many difficulties. You must find the shelter. You must reach it. See you later, Shizen. I couldn't help but sob, but she no longer had the strength to open her eyes and comfort me. The night was like a winter quilt in the south, damp, thick, and suffocating, but it couldn't warm my heart at all. When the sun rose again, I drove to the destination of our team, the shelter in City A. So it was this close. We arrived. I carried Shizen, picked up the backpack with the box, and walked towards the shelter. The lead-gray walls of the shelter stood tall, with some mottled dark red marks on them. I took a deep breath, held Shizen tightly and walked inside. After a simple registration, I was taken to a place that looked like a cafeteria. I handed over most of my supplies and finally got this place where I could relax for a while. After going through so much hardship and finally being the only one to reach here, my heart felt as if it was soaked in ice water, and even the pain had become numb. Looking at the porridge in front of me, which was made from who knew what, I forced myself to eat, but I couldn't swallow it. Just then a person sat down across from me. Looking at this strange woman in front of me, I was a bit puzzled. You still owe me an ocean view house. The woman smiled, revealing 2 tiger teeth, looking cunning and cute. My hands were a bit shaky. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I would find out that this was a dream. I'm back. It's me, Shizen. My lips were tightly pursed, and my eyes were getting sore. Do I look good? Shizen tossed her hair, with a relaxed and natural expression on her face. How did you? I don't know either. When I woke up yesterday, a woman who looked like a nurse was saving me. The owner of this body had been ill for several days, and was barely brought to the shelter by her teammates. Unexpectedly, it was me who benefited. Shizen smiled self-deprecatingly. She looked at her hands a bit dazed. I didn't expect I could wake up again. Fortunately, this time I'm not a dog. I couldn't help but laugh softly. You look very nice like this. I knew you would definitely come. Shizen's firm gaze made a surge of strength well up in my heart. It was so nice to have someone to whom I could entrust my trust in life. I got this body for nothing. It seems I have to repay the favor to her teammates. Shizen propped up her chin and motioned for me to look at the other side of the cafeteria, where several young people of similar ages were sitting. As long as you're back, that's the main thing. We'll take things slowly in the future. Yeah, no matter how difficult it was, we've come through. It will only get better in the future. I couldn't help but touch Shizen's head and smiled gently. Okay, we will get better and better. Epilogue Female Lead's Perspective. My name is Shizen, and I'm an unlucky woman. On the day the zombies broke out, my fiancé pushed me into the zombie horde to save his own life. I thought I would die with resentment, but unexpectedly I was reborn. However, unlike those novels, I was possessed by a dog. It was like a punishment from heaven. Since then, I told myself never to trust anyone again. The moment my fiancé pushed me towards the zombies, I had a thorough understanding of the cold-heartedness of people. But how was a dog supposed to survive in a world full of zombies? Clean water, food, a safe place to live. As a mere mongrel, it was almost impossible to achieve all these. After careful consideration, I decided to look for a suitable partner. I observed humans very carefully, taking advantage of my small size. I would always follow closely behind them. Almost most people gave me the impression that I would become their meal. Until I met Zhang Duo. He was very capable, but also very kind to the point of being a bit of a soft touch. I watched as he was betrayed by his companions, and was lying dying in the mall. Perhaps I could give it a try, I thought, and walked towards him, revealing my secret to him. He accepted it quickly, and readily followed me to my secret place, and then invited me to be his companion. Before we split up to take action, I told him to wait for me at the courier point. But I had already arrived on the second floor across from the courier point early. I saw him hide inside in a sorry state, and find a pile of cans. But I didn't come out. I was gambling whether he would leave with the food by himself. But he didn't. He kept waiting for me, and even used the clumsy tsk sound to look for me. This time, I agreed to be his companion. He also had two other companions, a couple. The girl's name was Lu. She was very gentle, fed me eggs and spoke softly. The boy's name was Sun Yufei. He loved his girlfriend so much that he felt he was useless. But in this kind of world, what was the use of feeling sorry for oneself? I told him that if he wanted to protect Lu, he had to first become strong himself. Later, I sometimes thought back. If I hadn't persuaded him like that, would they have had a different ending? If we hadn't split up to take action, would they have been safe? But it was all too late. I watched as the strong and brave Lu closed her eyes in front of me. The sensitive and kind Sun Yufei turned into a zombie, and pounced on us ferociously. Zhang Duo broke down. I knew he was very sad. I was as sad as he was. But there was no time for sadness. I could only use my body and blood to attract the zombies, giving Zhang Duo the chance to retrieve Sun Yufei's zombie body. Finally, we burned the bodies of Lu and Sun Yufei with our own hands. The sparks spiraled upward, just like my life. At that time, there were really too many zombies chasing me. My body was covered with wounds caused by them. It turned out that dogs could also get infected. Lying in the back seat, I thought weakly. Zhang Duo was very sad. I could feel it. He didn't even dare to speak loudly to me. He kept imagining the future with me. Also, he drove really fast. Every bump was very painful for me, but I didn't say anything, because I knew he just wanted someone to save me quickly. It was a pity that I still didn't make it in the end. Zhang Duo's sobs surrounded me. I was so reluctant to leave him. Maybe heaven heard my wish. I actually woke up again. And this time, the first thing I saw was a human hand. I was reborn as a human, and I found Zhang Duo. The way he looked at me with red eyes was really in a sorry state. But I was really happy looking at him. Perhaps I'm also a woman who's lucky, aren't I? The end of the full text.